My encounters with BDS were different. One time when I was in California school, a professor was heckling me during a presentation and calling me these terrible names. And when I said if I asked her to either leave or to ask a question and I'll answer and then she can leave. And she said, "Well, answer this question and I'll leave." I said, "Okay, what's your question?" And she said, "How many Palestinians were raped by Israeli soldiers in the last 5 years?" So I said, "It's a great question because my unit actually counts those cases. And in the last 5 years, there was not even one case of sexual harassment reported by Palestinians against Israeli soldiers." And she says, "I know it. And I have a research here." And she pulls out this pages from her bag that shows that the Israeli army is the only army in the world with 0% of sexual harassment towards the Palestinians because it's so racist. And that's a proof that the Israeli people are racist because you're not raping the Palestinians. Um, for me, it was really ludicrous. And I mean, my only answer to her that day was, "How many Palestinians do you want us to rape to stop being racist? What will be a good number in your mind?" It was a crazy encounter. Then later on, I learned that this professor is promoting BDS, and I think that's pretty much the story of BDS. It's about promoting a false narrative, taking anything positive about Israel and just twisting it around. And that's what this professor was doing with this research. Here's a positive thing: Israel sexual harassment of Palestinians is so low. Looking at other armies, it's the army with the lowest sexual harassment rate, and we can also change this around. And that's what BDS is doing. It's twisting everything around and finding a way to turn it on Israel. In other cases, I was able to actually change people's mind about BDS, and that's something we need to do. I was speaking in the UK at Bristol University, and the Palestinian group came to the event and they listened to me, and they promoted BDS for a while. And after my event, they stayed to have a conversation with me. It was just me and them. And they tweeted that night that they are dropping BDS, that they don't want to promote the boycott anymore, and that they just want to work for a dialogue and understanding. It goes to show that really a dialogue and listening to the other side and have a conversation with them is the right way to go. And just explaining them what BDS is about. BDS is a racist, bigoted movement that is attacking only one state while ignoring all human rights atrocities. And if they understand that, they can realize that they've been lied to. Why only boycotting Israel when you don't call to boycott any other country? Why to promote this false claims when you know that they are wrong and that there's worse cases of human rights violations? Yeah, again, Israel is not perfect, but to compare it to any other conflict, armed conflict in the world, you see that it doesn't make sense that this whole movement is growing. There's something else. There's a rooted problem with BDS, and it's this obsession with the Jewish state. BDS, the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement against Israel, is promoting a false narrative. They actually appropriate every narrative out there to them. If it's a racism, it's part of them. If it's indigenous rights, it's part of what they're fighting for. They really align themselves with different minority groups, and it comes from the understanding that these minority groups today are going to be majority groups in many of the Western countries in the future. And that's why they're trying to find these connections with Black Lives Matter, with the queer LGBTQ movement. And I think we need to outsmart them. And the way to outsmart them is really to reach out to these groups. And it's something that we've kind of forgot to do, to find a way to connect to Black student groups or Black groups in general, to connect to queer groups, to connect to indigenous groups, to find the way that we relay our narrative and our story to them. There's nothing in common between the queer struggle around the world and the Palestinian struggle. Nothing in common. Even worse than that, it's pretty much the opposite in this area, in areas that are under Palestinian control. And I can tell you because I know some people that have went through a lot of terrible things in living under the Palestinian Authority. And if we don't relate our narrative in the right way, we are losing these groups. If we are not focusing on reaching out to those minority groups that, again, will be a majority one day, we kind of are losing the battleground. So I think every person that cares about Israel, that cares about Zionism, needs to find a way to share his story with non-Jews, with people that are not affiliated with Israel. Share the story of Israel in a way that will be compelling enough to other people, and make sure that you give them something to connect to. In my talks, I always find something that will give the audience connection to me. If it's when I'm talking to students, it's about pop culture and to mention some names of celebrities that I will connect to. If it's speaking to a Christian audience, to find ways to connect to what they believe in. Always to find a way to get some emotional connection to your audience. That's the most important thing, and I think it's the most effective thing, and that's what everyone can do. I mean, if you probably are surrounded with people that don't know much about Israel, have a conversation with them, find a way to connect to them, and find a way to bring Israel to them in a way that they can relate to.